It's really interesting when we look more closely at this. Good afternoon YouTube, and welcome back to the channel. Today I'm changing the clutch on the Royal Enfield Himalayan. Stay tuned. So in preparation for this, guys, I've already removed the engine guard obviously, and I have drained the oil out of this. It's been sitting draining for well over an hour now. So just disconnect the clutch cable there, and now I'm going to remove this little bolt here. This is a 17mm bolt. Let's make sure we have it the right way around. There we go. Now you can see there's not a lot of oil coming out of here, and that's because I've been draining it for quite a while. I've had it tipped over and all that sort of stuff. I've done an oil change on the channel before, so again it's not something I necessarily want to repeat on video. The bolts all the way around the casing are 8mm, and to be honest the torque on them is negligible. It's like nothing. Easy enough. These are usually easier. See if you just use the ratchet, it's much easier than just fiddling with the end of your fingers. For most of you guys, I'm teaching you to suck eggs obviously. Now I'd hoped to put a Hitchcocks clutch in here, guys, but I had to cancel that because they're not going to be available until the middle of May. This clutch is a 6-plate clutch, or 12 technically, it's 6 and 6. But the Hitchcocks one is thinner plates and there's 8 of them. I can't wait another 6 weeks to do the job, you know. So I've had to go with an Enfield clutch. So I would say 10 minutes to get the engine guard off, 10 minutes just to, there's a lot of bolts, but I mean they're not difficult, tight or anything. Just trying to take it out as evenly as possible. You know, I don't want to just force anything. Oh, exciting time. Ta-da! Obviously we don't want to be laying that down on the stones. So here it is. I mean, it's tidy enough. I'll give it a bit of a wipe obviously, but let's get this clutch out. These are M6 bolts with a 10mm socket. I'm just removing 2 at the moment. That's because I've got a tool that I want to use to lock this clutch before I try and take the bolt out. The little bearing looks to be in good condition. Certainly no issues there. This is a clutch locking tool. It's got little pins in there and the pins fit into the holes, and that just locks that to give me the opportunity to crack that nut off. Now the pins on this are probably about 1/4 mil too big, but the pins are removable and I'll show you how we can do this. You may well see people putting screwdrivers and stuff in here. Don't do that. Okay, if you can avoid it, find a different alternative to lock your clutch. Got this tool locked in place here. What I've done is I've used longer bolts. Now these are far too long. I think these are maybe 100mm bolts, but that now means that this clutch is locked in place, which allows me to remove the bolt from the centre. Little washer at the back gets bent over, yeah, just to lock the bolt. All I've done is push that straight. It's a big old bolt, but it's not actually overly tight. It's tightened in the direction that this actually moves. Get the longer bolts locked in here, and I'm just going to remove all of these. You don't need to do it like this, guys, but what I've got is I've got the tension remaining on the springs here, and it means that this whole thing's not just going to spring off on me. Obviously, as I said in that last video, you want to check your oil level, you want to check the tension in your cable, eliminate the obvious. In between sort of videos there, what I did is I actually dropped the oil, I had fully synthetic oil in here. I put in some semi-synthetic, again just in case, just to eliminate that possibility, although I kind of knew in my heart of hearts that that wasn't going to help, you know. And it didn't, you know. The clutch kept slipping. Leave the plates in place for now. As you can see, folks, I've got a system, you know, so that I know which bolts are where. Keep everything separate. Well, on quick inspection, the good news, everything here looks neat, tidy, clean. as you would expect on a fairly new bike. So the basic plan here, guys, is to disassemble this, and then of course just to put it back together exactly the same way. Just keep that, put that clutch basket back in there basically. Had a look at the springs and stuff at the back here. Now these are obviously heavy duty, don't expect any problems with this. Here we have old and we have new. Now of course we don't want to mix them up, although it'd be quite difficult because these are frazzled. We'll get a good look at those in a minute. It's not a bad idea to give the friction plates a little bit of an oil bath. It's a little bit difficult for the camera to pick up, but you can see just how black these are. They're completely glazed. There's different thoughts and opinions on whether or not you should soak friction plates. And if you read forums online, some people are, soaking them, 24 hours. Some people are 5 minutes. To be honest, I'm leaving them in there for about an hour. That's, to my mind, that's more than enough. Initially, to help with that bedding in period, it takes a bit of time for the oil to circulate. And what you don't want is any sort of clutch drag or anything like that, which is the opposite of clutch slip. That brings us to the steel slipper plates here. Now at first inspection they look identical on both sides, but they're actually punched out of sheet steel, which means that on one side slightly rounded, and on the other side it's a little bit sharper. It's a good idea when you put your clutch together to have these plates facing in the same direction. And most people will say that it's best to have the sharp side out away from the bike, rounded side to the bike, sharp side out. I don't think it makes a huge difference, but again, it's always best. You'll see mechanics flipping them around, they never seem to want to explain why they're doing it. They're just kind of looking for, what's the rounded side, what's the sharp side, and they'll stack them in the same direction. So I put this little washer in here, and then we've got this one here. It's like a little bevel, almost like a spring. But make sure the bevel side's facing out. And as I said earlier, with these, you want to have them all facing in the same direction. So I'm just doing this by feel. And this is to the outside of the bike, so I'm putting it sharp side out. These are all well coated. Just going to put these on. Let's get this put back together. To make it a little bit easier for myself, you see these, put these 5 friction plates together. The one on the inside, the one on the outside, that goes into a slightly different slot. I'll show you that. There's 5 friction plates in this little groove in here, and then the very last one, or the first one, whichever way you want to describe it, that goes into this little recessed slot here. So it should be impossible to get it wrong. Once we tighten this little nut up, then we'll bend over a couple of these little times just to lock it in place. In order to tighten this bolt up properly, then of course I need to lock this again, because otherwise it just spins. Clutch comes with 6 springs, This is one of the older springs, but you can actually see, I'm trying to put equal force on those, and you can see how much softer this one is, just with wear. You've got 3 springs here, stronger springs from Hitchcocks. There's different schools of thought on this. Some people will go with 6 stronger springs, which recommended if you maybe put a big bore kit or a tech cam in. I'm going to go for a 3 and 3, and that gives you a good balance between having a little bit of a tighter setup in here, but still not overly tight on the lever and on the clutch cable here, not too much strain. When I say they're stronger springs, according to the Hitchcock website, they're about 20% stronger. Starting to get a bit of a sore back. It's always much better if you can get these things up at a decent height. Anyway. So guys, I ordered a new gasket with a clutch. However, I've decided I'm not going to put that on. I'm going to put the old one back on. I'm going to clean this up, put it back on. This is more like a sort of plastic material. It seems a lot sturdier. Get this nice and clean and nice and dry. See, with this stuff, less is more. Especially if you've got a gasket going on there. I don't think I really have any issues with this. We could certainly not had any issues so far. Let's get this back on the bike. Very nice. You want to be careful when you're putting these bolts back in. You don't want to cross thread them, otherwise you're going to have a real problem. You know, you're going to end up needing to re-thread these holes, and that would be a disaster. And again, I'm not just tightening this in a circle, yeah, I'm working crosswise. Let's get some oil in this, eh? So this time round, guys, we've got Castrol Power 1. It's a semi-synthetic, but as I said earlier, I had flushed the bike out a couple of days ago using this, you know, just to see if that made a difference on the clutch. This is the old clutch cable, so you would expect it to be a little bit stretched, and I've got a new one here. I'm going to replace it in the next couple of days, but already even with this old cable you can see how much extra adjustment I've got on here. Oh, nice and easy into first, which is good. Awesome. Initially I'm just going to heat the bike up nice and slow, take it around the village out into the countryside, just to heat up the oil, heat up those new plates. And I've also got the old clutch plates in the back here. Once we get out somewhere quiet, we'll have a good look at those, see exactly what's going on with them. Already, even at low speeds, the bike's feeling really responsive, and the gear shift is nice and smooth, which if I'd put the clutch in completely dry, then at this stage that wouldn't be the case. It'd be quite rough action, be quite clicky and quite clunky, maybe even stick. I spoke before about clutch drag, which is the opposite of clutch slip. It's when the clutch doesn't disengage properly. If you ever get that, these bikes don't seem to be prone to it, but if you ever get that, the gear shifts would be extremely stiff, really sticky. Neutral can be almost impossible to find because that clutch is never fully disengaging, even with the, you know, the clutch lever pulled in. It's always trying to move forward. If we put this in neutral, whether the bike's on or off, then the bike is happy to move back and forward. If the clutch was dragging though, that just wouldn't happen. Yeah, it'd be really hard to move. You can move it usually, but it's really difficult. And even then, if you put it into gear, for example, doesn't matter, first, second, whatever, and you hold the clutch in, then trying to move the bike backwards would almost be impossible because it's still engaging, and in fact it would be trying to move the bike forward. So that's how you can diagnose it. If you've got any experience with this, guys, I'd love to know about it in the comments below. Now, if we look at these clutch plates here, we can see that there's a fair bit of wear and some discoloration, but it's not even across the board, which I think is really interesting actually. Now, ordinarily with a clutch you can kind of recover it, in all honesty. If you clean up the friction plates, for example, with you know, a little bit of clutch or, you know, brake cleaner, they're kind of one and the same thing, and maybe use a wire brush, a little bit of fine grit sandpaper, then you can bring these back to life. Not in every instance obviously, but what I find really interesting about this is there's obviously some discoloration and some wear, but it's not even by any means. If we look at these two clutch plates here, these two friction plates, they've come out the bike bone dry. They're almost like brand new. There's very little wear on them whatsoever. You can see the difference in the colour. If we take this one for example, there's no way you would be able to recover that friction plate. It's completely smooth. There's absolutely no grip on that at all. So for any dirt bike aficionados out there who are in the habit of burning through clutches, or any, you know, mechanics or clutch engineers, I'd love to know your thoughts on it. Maybe in my next oil change, about 3,000 miles from now, I'll take the clutch cover off and I'll inspect the clutch plates just to see if we're getting some of that uneven wear again. Okay, let's get it up through the rev range. Nice.
Synth.